I'd like to welcome you all. Thank you so much for coming here. Welcome to the California Academy of Sciences. My name is Sonia. I'll be your presenter for today. And what you're attending right now is called Chat with an Academy Scientist. And the Academy has many scientists of many different kinds that go out into the world and find new species, or they dig for specimens that are from a very, very long time ago.
Yep.
And what we're trying to do here is explore the world, explain what that life is in the world, and also protect it. And a lot of the work that we do is very important for making sure that places that have a lot of biodiversity are protected, or knowing what's most important for us to protect. So it's pretty cool stuff that goes on here. And this is Peter Roopnarine. And Peter, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do here.
Okay, I'm the curator of geology and paleontology, and also chair of our Department of Invertebrate Zoology and Geology. My job entails conducting original research in paleontology that's studying life from the Earth's past, ranging anywhere in age from 12,000 to several billion years old. I don't cover that entire time span, as well as overseeing the geology collections at the Academy, which consists of the fossils, also minerals, gems, and meteorites. And yeah, I think that's about it.
All right. Now, how many of you wanted to be paleontologists when you were younger? Anyone? Me? Just me? As far as paleontology goes, usually I think of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Right? Dinosaurs, paleontologists out there digging. I have a photo of you here. What exactly would you be doing in this photo?
So actually here I was looking at volcanic rocks, and when I do my paleontology, since I'm interested in life in the past, I look at both fossils as well as the general geology of whichever area that I'm studying to try to understand the environmental context of that area and what happened through time. So I'm very interested also in volcanism because those affect life. So in addition to looking at fossils in the field, I also spend a lot of time looking at areas that were had catastrophic volcanism.
Okay, so we're talking volcanoes and very old life, and the context being what lived there, what ate what lived on what.
Yep.
Now, I was at Ocean Beach just a little while ago. I don't know how many of you have been. It's just right down at the end of the street, kind of a couple blocks down the street.
But
a lot longer than that.
Best weather of the year together.
Yeah. And I thought maybe I would pass this around, and maybe some of you can take a look at it and see what you can see. And then I'm going to pass it to Peter and see if he can tell me what it is. So I'm going to pass this around. Just take a look at it. And for the rest of you, you'll tell the difference because we have bags around these other ones. If you want to take a look at some of the other fossils, can you tell us just what is a fossil?
So fossil is any remain or trace of once living organism or life on Earth, and it can range from things like such as a body fossil. So here we have the shell of an ammonite. It's a relative of squid and octopus. This is a shell that it had lived about 80 million years ago in California. So this is a body fossil, and this is what most people are familiar with in terms of fossils. But a fossil can also be just the part of a skeleton. So this is a cast of a tooth from a Tyrannosaurus rex, just one of dozens of teeth in that mouth. And it can also be traces, footprints. So famous human footprints, for example, dinosaur trackways, burrows that animals have made. And then there are also chemical fossils. So life alters the environment around it. And so we can actually look at rocks and the composition of rocks, the chemical composition, and know if life affected those rocks or if life was possible in those rocks. And that's generally what we do when we go back past 600 million years in Earth's history. Almost all life then was microscopic, but it left really distinct chemical signatures. And that's the sort of thing that they're doing with the Mars Curiosity project right now, for example, like for that sort of thing.
Very cool. So when you're looking at these fossils from the past, what do they tell us about, how can we inform what we see today looking at those?
Well, they tell us a lot of things. They give us an idea of how ancient life is on Earth, and we think the Earth is about 4 billion years old. We think that the earliest life forms arose about 3.8 billion years ago. We know that the first sort of macroscopic or large life forms that you can actually see. However, it didn't arise until about 600 million years ago. So it tells us that building a complex organism, obviously, or evolving one, is not that easy because so much time passed. It tells us what life can withstand on the planet. Life goes through sort of boom and bust cycles. We have times in the Earth's past where there's evolution just is churning out new species, new types of organisms, and then there are times where we have extinctions and the diversity or the richness of life on Earth goes down. We want to know what conditions promote that origination, what promotes that extinction, and also how has life recovered from those past extinctions.
All right.
Can I field questions now?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the question?
The question was, is there any evidence that mass extinctions or extinctions in general have been caused by volcanism in the past? And sure, there are episodes. Volcanism is actually more often associated with increases in diversity because it's pouring sort of raw nutrients, minerals from the inside of the Earth into the atmosphere, into the oceans. That increases competition, for example. But we have indications that the last mass extinction occurred 66 million years ago, and that's the one that did in the dinosaurs as well as the ammonites and so on. And that event was punctuated by a collision of the Earth with an extraterrestrial, with a small asteroid, but that happened at a time when climate was being altered very significantly by massive volcanism in India. Also, the largest mass extinction in Earth's history, 251 million years ago, 90% of all species in the fossil record disappeared at that time. That's just a huge change on the planet. And that one is associated almost entirely with massive volcanism in Siberia and to a lesser extent in China. So volcanism is probably the biggest smoking gun, no pun intended, that we have for mass extinctions.
That's pretty cool. So I'm curious how you were able to tell these things by looking at fossils, and I'll have you start out just by, I'm going to have you look at this, and for those of you out there, go ahead and think about what you thought you saw maybe in this fossil. Does anyone have an idea what they thought was in the fossil? Yeah. Looked like plant-type fibers, okay. Any other ideas? Yeah. Shell? Any other guesses out there? That's cool. I'm excited that.
Well, interpreting fossil discoveries can be very difficult, and I have seen many things. Many fossils are obviously bits of organisms from the past. We have no idea what they belong to, what the organism looked like. In some cases, we don't know if they're a plant, animal, or even fungi. This one is actually, and this is reasonably common, if you walk along Ocean Beach long enough, you will find some of these. This is part of a sea urchin, sand dollar, actually. This is a particular type of sand dollar called Dendraster that we still find today, ranges from about Alaska down through California, and is a very abundant, a related species, very abundant right off Ocean Beach today. And the shiny bits that you're looking at here, those would have been parts of the surface of that sand dollar that have since been polished very smooth. A lot of it has been lost. This is a sandstone that it's embedded in now. But when I look at it, I can see the plate structure. And if you look at any sand dollar today that's been scrubbed clean of the spines and so on, you will see that same plate structure there. And that tells me, when I saw the plate structure, it tells me right away that this is a type of animal called an echinoderm, that sea stars or starfish, brittle stars, sand dollars, and so on. And by the way they're arranged and they radiate, I think it's likely a sand dollar. And just given the fact that we find lots and lots of Dendraster on Ocean Beach, I said this is probably a Dendraster sand dollar. And it's probably about 2 million years old.
Very cool. Oh, I'm excited that I found that.
Nice find.
If anyone would like to take another look, you're welcome to, now that you know a little bit more about what it is. So what have you been working on recently? What are some more of your recent focuses? I know marine ecosystems are actually one of the things.
Yeah, so most of my work for the past few years has been looking at ancient ecosystems, both terrestrial and marine, and trying to reconstruct what these ecosystems looked like. And an ecosystem is all of the biological life in a certain time and place, and the physical and chemical environment that it interacts with. And that means first discovering which organisms lived in that time and place. So that's really knowing and understanding the fossil record, and then understanding the environment. What was the Earth like at that time? Easy enough to know if it was terrestrial and marine. But was it tropical? Was it temperate? Was it productive and wet or desert-like? And then building or reconstructing all of the ways that those organisms interacted with each other. So it's putting the ecosystem back together. And then what we're really interested in is then taking that and doing really bad things to it to see what does it take to make it fall apart, and how does it recover from that.
So you make models and assume based on what you see maybe near one other thing or find in the stomach contents of something.
Sure, bite marks.
And reconstruct a food web rather than a food chain. You actually provided some really cool images here of more of a simple food chain.
So this would be a food chain from a Caribbean coral reef. This little organism down here, this is microscopic. It's about a thousandth of a millimeter in diameter. But that little organism is one of the most abundant organisms in the oceans and is responsible for almost half of all the free oxygen on the planet. So it's an awfully important little thing. And then it's consumed by the soft coral, that's consumed by this filefish, that's beautiful, that's then consumed by the Caribbean reef shark. And that's what we think about when we think about a food chain. But of course, you can add certain bits to it. So here we have another so-called producer. It's not microscopic. This is a macroscopic brown algae you'll see on coral reefs. You go to the Caribbean, being consumed by the soft corals. This thing is also being consumed by this little microscopic eukaryote. Here's another fish, and so on. You can see how complex it gets. And as we begin to put that together for as many species in this Cuban coral reef as possible, this is what you get. And these are sort of groups of species, each one of these dots, and all these lines are the numbers of ways in which they interact. So it's an awfully complicated system. And it kind of looks like a... Pardon me?
What are the colors
the
represent?
Colors? So the red represent producers. These are the microscopic algae and so on. The yellow are groups of invertebrates, so mollusks, snails,
things without backbones,
clams, crustaceans, lobsters, crabs. And then this purplish color, these are the vertebrates, mostly bony fish and sharks, along with sea turtles, and I think that was it for this one.
I see. And so you apply what you know about the systems now to those ancient systems. So instead of just looking at the dinosaur, you're looking at the whole entire system and come up with something like this.
Yeah, so this is a simplified version of a terrestrial ecosystem from Western North America, roughly about 70 to 80 million years ago. And these, again, represent groups of organisms that would have been interacting. Some of them will be familiar, crocodilians, turtles, and so on. And even extinct ones, you can see different types of dinosaurs, and just about anybody here who's 4 years or under could name those dinosaurs 4 years, as well as various groups of plants. And what we were interested in was looking at this time period leading up to that mass extinction and seeing how the ecosystems changed and how it made them more or less robust against the volcanism and the asteroid impact that was sort of in their future.
So are there some patterns that you've noticed that when you look at those extinctions, are there any common threads?
Yeah. One of the things we've learned is that we used to think that more is better in terms of biodiversity, and so that everything depended on having lots and lots of species. And that's still important. Richness is important. But the other face of diversity is not who you are, but what you do. And so what we're learning is that you really have to have a diversity of jobs, if you will, in the ecosystem. And there are some key elements. So you have to have producers that are making the energy, and it's very important to have those first consumers or herbivores that are then consuming that and passing it on. And then it's very important to have that control at the very top, the top predators. And if you have those elements together, you have an ecosystem that can actually withstand a lot. If you don't have those elements, then you become very, very sensitive to really relatively minor fluctuations in things like climate.
Wow. So has anyone here ever done a fossil dig or seen a behind-the-scenes tour here, seen some of our fossils? Where do you get your fossils? How do you get your fossils?
Most of my field work has been in the southeast United States, and this might not seem exotic, but boy, the southeast United States for the last 35 million years of Earth's history is one of the most important fossil spots on the planet, because it documents our planet going at that time from a very warm planet to a very cool planet. I do a lot of work in Western North America also on things that are very young to very old, about 350 million years ago, and down into Western Mexico also. And then I've also done a bit of work in Southeast Asia.
Kind of glamorous.
Yeah, it's sort of glamorous, except at the end of being out there for a while, it doesn't seem so glamorous. You know, if you're out in the desert and you roll around day 4, day 5, and you really haven't had a shower yet, it's not so glamorous anymore.
Actually, this summer I went to a single day of a dinosaur dig, a fossil dig myself, and I was feeling that way after about one day.
Yeah, especially weather like this. And our field work is really very basic. We use the very basic tools that you need as a paleontologist in the field would be a hammer to break up rocks or to extract rocks to bring them back to the lab for later work, and a compass. And I should have brought my compass. Those are slowly being replaced by GPS, but we have a special type of compass that we use as geologists called a Brunton compass that allows us to geolocate ourselves as well as understand the angles at which the rocks that we're looking at are dipping and climbing at any given place. And we can map what that area looks like geologically and then reconstruct what it would have looked like in the past. And I said that's slowly being replaced by more sophisticated digital instruments. And basically it's a lot of digging into the dirt, and paleontology is heavy work.
I can imagine. Although you have adventures, extreme adventures, like you were attacked by a squid.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
So I've done a lot of work in Sonora and Baja, California, one of my favorite places. And this photo was taken on a day we were in Campton, Bahia de Los Angeles. Some of you might know that, in central Baja, one of the most beautiful spots on the west coast of North America. And we were hiking up the coast around. We left the bay, we were hiking up the coast looking for some deposits that are about 12 million years old. And we're walking on this beautiful spot where there's these towering volcanic cliffs on one side and about maybe 20 feet of flat, bare, pink rock with the water lapping onto it. It's sort of picturesque. We hear this commotion behind us, and there's nobody around. There were just two of us. Turn around, there are all these Humboldt squid that were anywhere from 4 to 6 feet in length. About 6 of them had beached themselves on this rock platform, and they're fascinating and also a little bit terrifying because they move and they rise. And the colleague that I was with was really fascinated by this and insisted that we try to save these things. So I told him that I didn't think that was such a good idea, but he went over anyway, and he pushed at one with his foot, and it inked him from his waist down. And so he jumped back, and I said, well, here, let me give it a shot. And so I went over with my rock hammer to one of them, and he was taking photos of this, and I pushed at it with the rock hammer, and this is just the first photo, but it reached up and it grabbed the hammer, and it pulled me down. They're incredibly strong, and all the tentacles started coming the hammer, and it was busily biting away at my steel hammer. And I think I was screaming like a 3-year-old at that point. We did manage to save 2 of them. The rest of them were just far too aggressive for us to get close to. That's my squid adventure.
Very nice. Well, it's always good that you, we know that you are now out having adventures and also learning very, very important science. This definitely applies to our lives now,
Yes.
making sure that those different pieces of the ecosystem, this is part of that explore, explain, protect,
Yep.
exploring the past and figuring out what we need for the future to make sure
That's
we
right.
have that really stable future. So it's pretty nice, important work. Now, this would be a really great time for questions. We have a couple minutes if anyone would like to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, so how do we deal with the different continents or reconstructing ecosystems? And the truth is that we have reconstructions for very limited times and places right now. So this one is for Western North America. And what we learned about the changes here, we basically threw out an open question as to whether or not this could be applied to the rest of the world at this time, because the dinosaur record is, and the ecology of dinosaur-bearing communities at this time is very well known in Western North America and in Europe. But we know that we have tremendously rich fossil records in East Asia, so China, we're beginning to learn a lot, and in South...
Ever wonder if the park's plants are more than just decoration?
and in South America.
For Discovery
But-
Nature Walk.
Almost.
Tour. To learn more about the stories and uses behind plants from the Academy's
This is funny.
And there you go.
Okay, we're back after that brief commercial. Right. But yeah, we don't know if it applies to those other areas because we haven't been able to do those reconstructions yet. Even in the modern, we have very good reconstructions for some areas. So we've done a lot of work on Caribbean coral reefs. Indo-Pacific coral reefs, which are much richer and more geographically extensive, we have nothing comparable. So it's really sort of spotty. When we have sort of continents moving around in the past, the way that you deal with that is a lot of field work. You walk a lot of geology to reconstruct what the Earth would have looked like in the past. And we have very good geographic reconstructions now, but we're really still in the early stages of being able to reconstruct what life was like system-wide in each place. So a lot of our work, most of our work of this sort has focused on 251 million years ago, that mass extinction in South Africa, which has a rich fossil record. We've been sampling it for about 150 years, so we understand it very well. And it's only within the last 4 years that we've started moving out into other areas in Tanzania, for example. And what we're finding is very surprising. Before the mass extinction, as we move north, and we'd love to get south to Antarctica, but as we move north into other areas of Africa, we realized that this was a very widespread, very uniform ecosystem. After the mass extinction, things were very, very patchy. And so right there, with just 4 years of work, it's changed our view of what it would have looked like. So yeah, that's a good question.
Wow.
Work in progress.
Yeah, actually, if you want to check out, have you been to our earthquake exhibit? There is a little bit about the shifts that happen geologically and some of the life that was found across continents and then subsequently broke up. So I would recommend going and
there's a
seeing
strong
that.
focus there on how we use fossils to reconstruct the continent configurations and then how that informs us about the fossils in turn.
Any other questions before we get going? All right, well, one more.
Oh, the Denisovans? Yeah.
So what about the human human ancestor?
Yeah, you know, the human family tree in the past was much richer than it is today. We have a single species today on the planet. In the past, we have multiple species, and what we're learning is that at any given time, there were several different species of humans, and so we know that one of the most recent non-modern human species were Neanderthals. And we learned after we discovered Neanderthals that modern humans and Neanderthals actually overlapped in time and space. We probably interacted. And very recently we've learned that there was a third species called the Denisovans in the Siberian area that we also overlapped with. And what's really interesting is that modern humans, Neanderthals, Denisovans, all had sort of modern traits in terms of culture and technologies. So whether that showed, blossoming of different capabilities in the various human species or active exchange, we don't know what happened to those. We know that there are Neanderthal genes in modern humans, so we know that there was interbreeding and Neanderthals survive in modern humans. There's some indication, but it's very preliminary, to suggest that Denisovan genes might be present in ancient East Asian populations also. So that's very exciting. We're carrying genes. In fact, we are, to a certain extent, those ancient relatives.
Very cool. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming out and spending your time with us. Can we give him a big round of applause?
Thank you. Good questions.
And thank you all so much for coming to chat with the scientists, because we really do want to let you know how amazing our scientists are.
Oh.
And we have someone who's very enthusiastic about dinosaurs, so I will invite you to go and see the rest of the museum. But if you would like to stick around and talk with this amazing little boy about dinosaurs, we'll be doing that off the mic. Thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the rest of your day.